Good evening, everyone. It is August 5th, 2023. Strap yourselves in because I think this one's going to be a long one. Let's start off with the ES Sunday and Monday night. All three of these kind of sessions, if you want to call it that, rejecting this Thursday liquidation. And then we sold down Tuesday, failed to get back above this kind of 08-ish balance high. And then Wednesday was our major external hours trading gap down that was on I think it was the Fitch or whatever you call it, credit downgrade. Didn't really pay too much attention. I was actually long off the Globex Open for the move back up. Uh, Anyway, continued, had a nice gap down, broke the prior week's low for the first time in a while. We lost that bid there, and we churned around last month's VWAP close at 45.41. That was around there. And then the next day, another move downwards on Friday, or sorry, on that Thursday, another gap down session. Rejected the gap close initially, and then we moved down a little bit lower, and then we had our gap close finally to the price close at 45.36, I believe it was, or 37. That's where I was short. We sold back down. Friday, we had a morning ramp, sold off, bid it up. That's where I got long. Moved up to this balance. That's what I was looking for. Was a test of these balance lows around 45.53 to 66. We tested this trend line over here, sold off. You could call it the trend line, the balance lows, weekly VWAP, whatever you want to call it. That's when we got the proper liquidation down to new weekly lows, down to the first half of the year's point of control at 45.02s, down to that old weekly high at 45.93 and three quarters, if I recall correctly, or 94, cannot remember. And that's where we put in the weekly low. So we closed on the lows, which usually is indicative of some sort of short covering to follow. So I'll get into that in a second. Let's just go over the NQ as well. Obviously, similar story, but this gap here, there is a small gap. You can't see it here on these external trading hours, but there is a gap going up to 911, and we rejected it once again. We hit the second standard deviation of the prior week's weekly VWAP. We had hit it during the external trading hours, rejected that gap again during the RTH, sold off. Tuesday, we kept rejecting the highs once again, sold off some more. Wednesday was that big external trading hours gap down. Down to below, we end up getting down into the prior month's point of control, prior month's VWAP close, all that sort of stuff. And then eventually we got some bids. And sorry, most importantly, we lost this pivot zone here. We lost this bullish balance zone that I was looking for. You can see this was the balance here. We managed to reclaim it, and I was hoping we would keep on reclaiming it, but we couldn't. External trading hours tried to hold it. We sold off during the regular hours off of it down to new lows. Now, Thursday, we had another gap down. We managed to hold this 350 area numerous times. There's a gap below there. That's the second time we held that gap. So we managed to hold it during the external trading hours, did not break that overnight low. Instead, this thing was really bid, especially relative to the ES. It held the open when the ES was flushing down to new lows. This thing held the open perfectly and ramped back up very aggressively. Friday, all day Friday, we were able to hold these Wednesday lows, managed to ramp up, but once again, we were rejected at that prior month's point of control, VWAP close, weekly VWAP, all that sort of stuff around this 600 number, right around there. That's where we were rejected. And same as the yes, liquidation broke this bullish trend line, liquidation down to new lows, and of course a close on the lows. So both tickers, to me, have put in their highs of the quarter. We can just zoom out here. Hit that 16,000, unable to make new highs, constant rejection of that gap. Down below, we have now fallen below the first half of the year's high at 475s. Kind of churned around there for a day. You can see it was bid right off there, churned around there, and now it looks like we're heading lower. We are getting into this major trend line I have here, so I'm interested what happens here. I want to make sure I have an alert on it. So I'm curious what happens there. If not, I think in general we'll end up finding a bid somewhere around that 100 area. I don't think we're going to get another monumental sell this week, but that's just what I'm thinking. ES, I'd mentioned that I'm thinking of a quarterly high around 4,600, the lower 4,600s. August, I was looking for us to only have kind of a 200-point range, something like This is what I was kind of looking for, 45 to 65. Not sure if that holds up. We need to hold that gap around 44.73, that gap close, the price gap close at 44.73. We need to hold that. We need to hold this balance here. I'm not sure what exactly happens. So that's how I'm kind of looking at this on a higher time frame. Let's go down to the weekly here. On the ES, this is a fat balance. 88s are an old quarterly high. Above their 08s, I like that as sort of a balanced number from these highs over here. Reject, reject, reject. Try and bid it up. Hard to see on your guys' screens. And this is the day when we kept rejecting the liquidation highs at 25. So I'm aware of 44.08. Interestingly, our weekly point of control never moved down, so 46.04s. That's also a number of interest. The monthly open at 45.99s, I believe that is. Yeah, 45.99.5. All this sort of stuff is are numbers that I'm aware of, and it's just created this fat sort of upper balance, just like how we have this fat lower balance going from about 44.44 half. That's where we kept rejecting up to about 65, which is where we kept being bid off of after this rejection here. Now, I want to delete that actually. This is kind of another area that I'm looking for. So what I want to see is something like this. What I'd like to see is a bid something like this. If we come down into here and find a bid around this 73 price gap close, or maybe even just that range gap close as well, at 78 half. If we're able to find a bid in there and reclaim kind of this 26 area, the monthly half back from July, if we're able to come down here, churn, whatever, find a bid, come back up, we should be able to get some sort of covering here, and maybe we'll spend some time balancing in here for the week. Kind of 44.70 to 45.50. Something like that. That would be a 90-point range. For reference, 150 points, I believe, is the larger end of what we've had for weekly ranges this year. And this week we had 130 points. We're coming into mid-August. It wouldn't be too surprising to expect kind of a smaller, duller range. No major news other than Thursday's CPI, Friday PPI. Right? I don't think we'll be getting a move below 44.18. That's kind of the -2 standard deviation of monthly VWAP from last month's VWAP. You've got a monthly point of control at 19. You've got a weekly point of control at 19.25, a monthly low at 19.5. The first half of the year is 95% value area high at 20.5. All this sort of stuff, and in general, this was the key balance area to avoiding getting down to here. And moving forward, it's the key number to avoiding getting into that contract gap at 43.03s. So overall, what I'm looking for is we closed at the lows. I think you'll get some sort of covering. I think eventually you'll close this gap down at 73 to 78. Reclaim kind of this 44.85-ish number. First half of the year is closed, 86.25. There's a weekly point of control at 85. The -2 standard deviation, 82.25. So ideally, what I would actually really like, see us come down, close the gap, reclaim 82s, and then move upwards. That would be beautiful. And then we can just, have some nice rotational trade in here for the week. I don't think it's going to be a week for looking for giant moves. I think it's going to be a rotational week between these two balances we now have, between something like here and here. I think that's what you can look for. Jesus Christ. 10 minutes almost. Let's get into the NAS. There we go. Nasdaq. 3. Just trying to find a level to put in there. I like 342. Now, for the Nasdaq, bit of an odd chart here. If we close the lower gap, which goes down to about 260, 278 and 3/4, sorry. If we close this lower gap down at 78s, also where we kind of built the bid and exploded up, if we close this gap and reclaim 342s, I think you're looking at 468. 468 being the weekly point of control, and right below the first half of the year's high at 475. So I think if you manage to hold this area, you're looking at a reclaim up to here, and then up to 475, and maybe even some sort of move into the weekly VWAP close at 595, or this area where we had the bid, the offer, offers, right? Shorts at that point want to see a quick sell-off. A quick sell, get back below 520s, get back below 475s, and keep on putting on the pressure down to something like 139. 161s, and this is a little bit of a zone here, 100 to 170. 161s are the 95% value area low from last month, from July. In general, I don't think you're going to break the monthly low at 15K, roughly, 15,060-ish. That's also the negative third standard deviation of VWAP. So I think this week, just like on the ES, is going to end up looking like some sort of balance between, for the most part, something like this, 480 to 110. About a 300-point range, and I think you might have, a little bit of wider moves out to there, to 600 to 15K. So that's what I'm looking for this week. One final thing before I head off on this 12-minute video. Let's get rid of the drawings here for a second. This is year-to-date VWAP. As you can see, we were nicely holding under the second standard deviation. June broke out above and held the second standard deviation. Now finally in August, we've broken below there. That hyper bid environment that we've been used to for all of June, all of July, all of this is now done with. So the move is probably to look for more balanced trade until we get to that contract gap at 43.03. So that's how I'm going to have a constant backdrop in my head on this thing, is that we've lost that ultra bullish momentum. We can go back to looking for some more sort of two-way trade. That's how I'm going to be looking at this thing moving forward. So anyway, I don't think that we accept above here this week. I think that in general we're going to be playing in this sort of balance, right? More so this sort of balance. It's kind of 100-point range. I think it'll be a tighter week, a quieter week. 13 minutes. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. Have a great night. Trade safe. See you guys on Monday.